Hi guys, I am back today with another easy DIY project for you. Today I'm going to show you how to make this easy DIY no-sew bench seat cushion. You can use the steps in this video to make an upholstered bench seat for furniture like I did here, for window seats in your house, for eat-in breakfast nook bench seats, for RV bench seats, and for boat bench seats. You want to start this project by cutting a plywood or MDF board to size. So you use a 1/2 inch or 3/4 inch board for that. You want to cut it to fit the area that you need the seat for. After cutting your board to size, you need to cut a piece of foam to fit that board. So an exact same size piece of foam. Now for this project, I'm using 3-inch thick foam, but you can go for a thinner foam depending on what look you want and how much you want to spend on the project. It's easy to cut that foam with a serrated knife from your kitchen or an electric knife with a serrated edge. You can attach that foam to the board with a spray adhesive. I'll link to that in the description below. Then use that same spray adhesive to attach extra loft batting to the top and the sides of that bench seat. So you want to cover the wood too on this project. Trim away the extra batting on the corners so that you have one nice smooth looking bench cover. Don't skip out on using that extra loft batting. That extra loft batting is what's going to give your cushion that nice rounded edge. If you skip that loft batting, your cushion is going to have that squared off homemade look that you don't want. That extra loft batting also gives your cushion that fluffy look that you want in an upholstered seat. Otherwise, you would have just a flat piece of fabric laying on a flat foam piece of cushion. So once you have all of that put together, it is time to start attaching the fabric. So really this project only takes me about 15 minutes when I do just one board. Lay your fabric face down onto a nice big surface like this tabletop, and then lay your bench seat cushion face down on top of that. And then you want to work on centering that bench seat cushion on the fabric so that the pattern is laid out perfectly. And you also want to work on centering the fabric underneath it and pulling it tight. So stretching it out underneath so that there is no wrinkling or bunching in the fabric before you start stapling it. You want to cut your fabric so that it can be pulled about 2 inches onto the board on all sides. That'll give you enough fabric to staple it onto the board. So I'm using a pretty basic stapler for this project, and it is a little bit hard on my hands. You can get electric staplers for a pretty good price that are easier to use. So I'll link to those in the description below. You need to use a heavy-duty stapler for this project. You can't just use your office stapler. And I'm using 3/8 inch staples in my stapler. Starting with the middle of one side of my project, I pull the fabric up over the edge of that board and hold it tight while I staple it into place. You're going to want to put a staple in about 1 every inch or even every 3/4 of an inch. So you want those staples pretty close together so that you don't run the risk of the fabric ripping when people are using that bench seat later. Staple the whole side except for about 3 inches near the ends of each side. So we're going to leave the corners unstapled, and I'll show you how to do the corners later. So after doing the first side, I move to the exact opposite side of that bench seat cushion, and I start working on the fabric on that side. So again, make sure that you've got that fabric pulled nice and tight. Hold it tight while you put the staples in every 3/4 of an inch or every inch, and keep the fabric away from about 3 or 4 inches away from the ends again. Once those first 2 sides are done, you can move on to the 3rd and 4th sides. You basically do the exact same thing on these sides also. Hold that fabric nice and tight, keep the staples close together, and leave the corners unfinished. So I'm going to move on to showing you how to do the corners next. So doing the corners on a no-sew bench seat cushion like this is kind of like wrapping a present or wrapping a gift box. You're going to end up folding that fabric in a pretty way. Just then I folded it over just to see how it's going to lay, but really I'm going to fold it under before I do the stapling. Getting the corners right is probably the hardest part of this project. So sometimes I end up having to remove staples, cut away little bits of fabric. You want to make sure that you're going to be able to fold that fabric under, have it look pretty on both sides where that corner meets, and not have it look bunched up. So take your time playing around with the corners, pulling that fabric tight on the sides, getting it all lined up before you start stapling. You want to have that fold end up laying right on that corner. And if you feel like you've made a mistake, and you can always remove staples. I use needle nose pliers for that, but you can also buy a staple remover. When you do start stapling the fabric on the corners, just remember that you want that fabric to look nice and smooth on the sides. You're not really worried about how it looks on the bottom of this bench seat cushion. I usually end up trimming away some of the extra fabric on the corners. That way I don't have a lot of bunching and a lot of thick fabric that I'm trying to get the staples to go through. Just make sure that you don't accidentally trim away fabric that's hiding the sides or that you need to hold the staples down. For this bench seat cushion, I decided I wanted the folds on the short sides of this seat. So I started by stapling the long side of the seat, if you didn't notice. So I stapled the long side of the corner. And now for the perfect side, the side that I want to look great, I'm going to do that last. So this is just the short corner. I'm folding that over last. And that helps me, doing that last helps me get that corner to look perfect. And I always put a bunch of extra staples in the corner when I'm finishing them up. Here's another quick tip if you're not using an electric stapler. I hammer in all of my staples, so they all seem pretty tight when I put them in, but I like to hammer them in so that they're super tight and flat against the board. Finish doing the other 3 corners and then have a look at your project. Flip it over, have a look at your project, and figure out if you think everything looks even and smooth. Don't forget you can always remove staples in certain sections and redo those if you feel like you didn't get it right the first time. And here is another look at my finished bench seat. So if you need to do this in a window seat that has multiple sections next to each other, just cut multiple boards, stick these cushions next to each other. You can do that for boats again, or RVs where you have bench seating for a table or something. That's it for this easy DIY no-sew bench seat cushion, guys. I'll put a link above to my other home upholstery projects. Check those out. They're easy too. Thanks for stopping by.